Hello everybody and welcome to Small Corner Games. What you see here is some kind of experiment I thought about doing for a while now. I thought that there may be a bigger audience for Magic 2015 videos outside of Germany. So this way I tried to, or at least I thought about doing my videos in English for, well, a couple or well, at least since it's been out actually. The last thing that really got me doing it was a comment by Mr. Aaron Schwartz. So, sorry dude if I misspell your name, but if you see this, in a way you're the reason I'm doing this video right now. So, I hope you enjoy it, though it's a re-upload of one of my deck guides. Because I thought it's familiar territory for me and I know it. Or I know the cards, and it would be easier as a first try or as a first video in English. I'm going to explain to you my SELFMILL deck, but this time in English, so never mind the mistakes. English is not my native language, but yeah, I hope you enjoy it anyway. Well, here we are. What I'm going to do now is I'll go through all those cards step by step and tell you some things about every single card and why I put it in there and why not, or why not. And the point is that I unlocked those premium boosters. I got a couple of premium cards in the deck, as you can see right here, Vaporsnack and Think Twice, but I'll give you substitutes for them at the end of the deck guide, so that you don't feel, well, at a disadvantage if you don't have those premium cards unlocked. They're good in this deck, but there are ways to build around them, so you don't necessarily have to have them. Let's get to it. Alright, first let's start off with the Hedron Crab. As I said before, this is a SELFMILL deck. Means it wants to get cards from your library into your graveyard and profit from them being there. And this card is one of the few possibilities to get cards in your graveyard from your library into your graveyard. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. It's a 0/2 creature for 1 mana. And it works both ways. You may target the opponent, and you may target yourself. So it's great in mill decks, but it's also great in the SELFMILL deck because you can target yourself. The point of this card is you want to have it in the game as early as possible. Usually it's the second turn, because in the first turn you play your mana, but don't make the mistake to play the Hedron Crab just yet, because you will expose it to well, enemy fire, I might say, especially if you're playing against a red deck. He may shock it right away. He may shock it in the next turn too, but let's at least delay this for one more turn if you play it in second turn. But remember, be careful, you have to play it before you play another land. So let's say you play a Guildgate in turn 1, you can't even play anything else because Guildgate comes in the game tapped. And second turn, you untap your Guildgate, play the Hedron Crab, and then play another land. So you profit from its effect early on. You get 3 cards in your graveyard from your library as soon as turn 2. Best case is it's let's say a Bloodgaze that you may play out in, or that may be played out in turn 3 because of its landfall ability, but we'll come to that later. So much for Hedron Crab. It's one of those engine cards, I'd like to call them, in the deck that puts your library into your graveyard. Alright. Next up is Vaporsnack. Vaporsnack, as I said, is a premium card, and in my opinion it's some kind of safety card, or I'd like to see it as a safety card, because you may, well, it's an instant of course, and you may rescue your creatures from enemy spells. But it's also a very, a good card for late game, because it only costs 1 mana, and you'll have plenty of mana open to recast several other creatures. This deck contains a lot of creatures that say when it comes into play, it is doing this or that. So there are a lot of creatures that have comes into play abilities. And Vaporsnack is one of those cards next to Quickling that may double the effects. These effects. Sorry. These effects. So, as I said, it's a premium card, but there are substitutes for it in normal Magic 2015. Quickling, in a way, works the same way Vaporsnack does. But it's a, in addition, it's a creature for 2 mana, a 2/2 flash flying creature. With some people might see it as a disadvantage that when it enters the battlefield, you have to sack it unless you return another creature you control to its owner's hand. So a lot of creatures, as I said, work or have these abilities that these come into play, triggers a certain effect abilities. And this is just another way to double these effects. And it also has some great synergies with other cards, but we'll come to that later. For now, Quickling, a safety card and a way to double those effects. Now, Think Twice is just a way to get a card advantage. It's a very simple card. It says for 2 mana, draw a card. Flashback, 3 mana. You'll find yourself playing it from the graveyard more often than playing it from your hand, because, as I said, you'll have a lot of cards in your graveyard, and usually among them there are 2 or 3 Think Twice. And it's one of those cards you want to use when you have too much mana, when you don't know what to do with your mana, especially in late game. But anyway, if you got it in your hand, you may play it, let's say, second or third turn too at the end of opponent's turn and get yourself a little card advantage. So much for Think Twice. It's a premium card, as I said, but I'll come to that later and give you substitutes. Bloodghast is the first black card in the deck. Well, at first sight it seems quite well. Yeah, what's the point of this card? It's not so good. I mean, like 2 black mana in a 3-color deck and just a 2/1 that can't block. But the ability makes it really great, the landfall ability. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Bloodghast from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, once this creature is in your graveyard, it will keep coming back again. And it may really go on your opponent's nerves, because, like, what is there to do with the card? You attack every single turn, or at least, you attack every single turn. Even if you got bigger creatures out, let's say you attack with 2 or 3 creatures, it's just 2 additional damage that have to be blocked. And this way, in a way it's cannon fodder, one might say, for some other cards later. But I'll talk about that when I'll talk about the other creature. And as I said, there are 2 of them in the deck, and usually they are in your graveyard. You don't have to worry about them. In fact, it's a card that just happens to appear sometime while you're fighting your opponent. You keep on putting those cards from your library into your graveyard, and sooner or later Bloodghast will appear. And well, it's just something that you'll take. Why not? It's great. And it works perfectly in a SELFMILL deck. Next up is Necromancer's Assistant. Well, you're in a SELFMILL deck, you're looking for ways to put your library into your graveyard. And this is the black way to do it. It comes into play and it says put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, which is not that great overall, but there aren't that many possibilities to put cards into your graveyard from your library. There are some blue cards that say, for like sorceries or instant, that say put an amount of cards into your graveyard from your library at once. But the point with Necromancer's Assistant is it may keep coming back. It may be returned to you. You may return it to your hand with Quickling or with Vaporsnack, and you may play it out again. So you got altogether like 6 cards in your graveyard. Or you may use another black card to well, for a short time remove it from the game and return it to the game the next turn. So this way you may profit from its coming into play ability more than once, and that's why this card is in the deck. Dead Reckoning, first of all, is a removal spell, and it's also a tutor in a way, because as I said, your library will be your graveyard in a way, and usually there are cards in there that have, or creatures that have 5 or even 6 power. So you with this card, you're dealing about you're able to deal those 5 or 6 damage to enemy creatures, and it works around well, for example, you may kill a Baneslayer with this card because it says protection from demons and not from black. This way I can even target one of my demons with Dead Reckoning, but the damage done to the Baneslayer Angel will still be done by Dead Reckoning. This way I may kill a demon with Baneslayer Angel with one of my demons, which is in a way very ironic and kind of funny. But as I said, it's first of all, it's a removal spell, and it's a tutor, and it's also very situational. I have to examine the situation I'm in at this moment. What do I need? What would help me the most in this moment? Is it additional creatures, or additional fatties, or is it additional card draw? Whatever. Whatever's in my graveyard, I can get back on top of my library. Remember, it's a sorcery, so I won't be able to do this in the enemy turn and get the card right in my turn. I have to play it in my own single turn and wait through the whole opponent's turn to get my card. But still, it's a very great card in my opinion. Shadowborn Demon is a removal spell. It's first of all a removal spell too, next to Dead Reckoning. It is a 5/6 flyer for 5 mana, which isn't bad either, but it has this amazing ability that when it enters the battlefield, I may destroy target non-demon creature. This applies to all creatures except demons, as it states, and except Baneslayer Angel, because it has protection from demons. And there's something else about this card that many people consider as this huge disadvantage, because it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are fewer than 6 creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature. Now you will find yourself sacrificing creatures far less than you might think at the first place, because as this deck is designed, there usually are a lot of creatures in your graveyard, so this effect won't apply all the time. And another great thing is you may sacrifice, let's say, Bloodghast, for example, and you may sacrifice Bloodghast, play a land, Bloodghast comes back. So it's, as I said, Bloodghast lives up to its full potential as cannon fodder for Shadowborn Demon. And Shadowborn Demon also works great with Quickling, because I may return it to my hand, play it out again, especially in the late game, and destroy another target creature. Or with Vapor Snack, usually, it's the same thing in a way. And it also works great with the next card, Rescue from the Underworld. Rescue from the Underworld says that as an additional cost to play it, I have to sacrifice a creature. And I may choose a creature in my graveyard and return that card and the sacrifice card to the battlefield under my control at the beginning of my next upkeep. But I have to exile Rescue from the Underworld. Okay, it's not bad. Not that bad. Point is that it is an instant, so let's say at the end of my opponent's turn, I may play this card, let's say sacrifice my Shadowborn Demon that is in play, and choose another creature in my graveyard. Let's say, I don't know, let's say one of those green creatures, for example, or a Runescar Demon if it's in my graveyard, and both of them will come back to play the next turn, and both their effects will trigger when they come into play. So I get to destroy another creature, and I also get to search my library for a card and put it that I may put in my hand without paying those 7 mana Runescarred Demon normally costs. So Rescue from the Underworld, a great card, and it works perfectly with all those comes into play abilities. Exactly. Alright, Runescarred Demon, as I said, is a tutor in the first place, but it's also a 6/6 flyer the opponent has to deal with, because I mean, let's say you got this card out and this card out, the opponent is on a 2-turn clock. If he doesn't do anything about those creatures, and if you have enough blockers to ward off enemy creatures, then he'll be dead in 2 turns, and that if he still has, or he or she still has those 20 life, his starting life. So don't forget that it's, in addition to its great effect, it's also, or to its great ability, it's also a very big flying creature. So let's move on to the green cards. The green cards are mainly in there for ramp reason, and for in order to make the deck faster or quicker, one might say. For example, Elvish Pioneer again has this ability: when it enters the battlefield, you may put a basic land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So works perfect with Rescue from the Underworld if you still have enough land in your hand. But remember, you have to put a basic land into play, and this deck has a lot of dual lands in it because it's tri-colored, and it simply won't work without dual lands, or it will face mana problems more frequently if you don't have any dual lands in it. So Elvish Pioneer, a way to ramp up the deck, and it also triggers the Hedron Crab or the Bloodghast, everything with landfall. So Elvish Pioneer, great card for ramp at very early in the game. Not at. Elvish Visionary is another one of those cards that give you card advantage. Later in the game, it becomes cannon fodder, basically. You may sacrifice it to Shadowborn Demon if you don't have 6 or more cards in your graveyard. But you may also, it's also a valuable target for Rescue from the Underworld, I think, because you get, let's say, most of the times you will use Rescue from the Underworld to get back Shadowborn Demon and another creature, and this card is, in my opinion, one of those viable targets you may return to your hand. And you, even at the beginning of the game, you may return it to your hand using Quickling, because it said 2 mana, draw a card. It's not something that should be neglected. And that's why it's also a very cheap card for 2 mana. Satyr Wayfinder is green's contribution to self-milling in a way, and it also ramps up the deck for 2 mana, a 1/1 that puts 3 cards in your graveyard, and additionally puts a land card from the top 4 cards of your library into your hand. Is also a great card. I mean, it puts into your hand, so it doesn't get it out right away, but it's still works even in late game. Especially since it also, indirectly triggers those landfall abilities. If you, let's say you have it in your hand, you play it out, you perhaps get a land, you play it out, and you may put 3 additional cards from your library to your graveyard if you get a Hedron Crab out, or you may return 1 or 2 Bloodghasts from your graveyard to play. So, green's contribution to self-milling, I'd say. Next card is Cultivate. It's in there for the ramp because there are a lot of creatures in there that, or a lot of spells that are above 5 mana or cost 5 mana, and that will be hard casted, and you will need those mana early on because you want this deck to be as quick as possible. And yeah, it's just a way to do it. And as I said before, it triggers those landfall abilities, and it also thins out your deck. Means you will draw fewer lands because you get them out of your library, and you're more likely to draw other cards. That's what usually what those fetch lands used to be in Magic 2014. Correct me if I'm wrong. Write in the comments, but I think it was Magic 2014. Thinning out the deck, very important point of Cultivate. Next up is Vengevine. Great card, awesome card. You may have it in your graveyard as soon as turn 2. Let's say you play first turn, you play a land. Second turn, you play Hedron Crab, you play another land, and 3 cards go from your library to your graveyard, and one of them might be Vengevine. And if you play, and it works perfectly with, I don't think you may return it to the battlefield if you play another creature in this turn, because it was put into the graveyard after Hedron Crab was played out. But let's say in turn 3, what you may do is you may play Quickling, for example, and return Hedron Crab to your hand, play Hedron Crab again, and Vengevine comes into play. And it means it may attack the turn it comes into play, which is awesome. And same way as Bloodghast, it keeps coming back to play when it's in your graveyard. Though the ability is not triggered by Bloodghast, because technically you don't cast Bloodghast. So you will have to find ways around it, but that's why all those cheap creatures are in there. All those, and especially Quickling. It's really a great synergy with Vengevine. Alright, Spider Spawning. I gotta say, I didn't have it in the deck at first place, but after a couple of games I thought, I might give it a try. I removed the Quickling for it, and it really helped me out. It, especially in the late game, it becomes extremely powerful. I am talking about situations where you have around, let's say, 30 cards in your graveyard, and among these cards is Spider Spawning, what doesn't matter because it has Flashback for 7 mana. And at that time in the game, mana isn't usually an issue anymore. So you just cast it for its Flashback cost and get around, I got around, I think, 9 or 10 token. And you have to keep in mind that the opponent needs a blocker for every single token you attack with. So let's say you got another 3 or 4 creatures on the battlefield and those 9 Spider Spawnings. You can imagine that if he only has, let's say, 3 or 4 creatures out, he'll only be able to block 3 or 4 of them Spider Spawnings alone, so which means that 5 to 6 damage comes through, only because of those little tokens. I don't even mention the other creatures you already got in, on the battlefield. This way, I think it's a really, really great card. Whether you play it from your hand or from the graveyard, it doesn't matter. As long as, most of the time you'll find yourself playing it late game, because you really need those creatures in your graveyard. There may be exceptions, for example, when you're playing against an aggro flyer deck, or a deck that really relates on flying creatures. You might need some creatures to block those flyers, and luckily these 1/2 tokens have reach. This way, I highly recommend playing this card, at least one of them. Give it a try, you won't regret it. Now, last but not least, Nemesis of Mortals. 6 mana, 5/5, which isn't so good at the first place. but the effect or its ability that it costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard means that usually you'll cast it for 2 green mana. Point is that it's a good card to have in your graveyard, since you might get it back, but it's an even better card to have in your hand. So it's just a green fatty that has to be dealt with in one way or another. It pulls enemy removal spells and pulls those spells away from your Runescar demon or your Shadowborn demon. It just acts, in a way, you might say it acts as cannon fodder, but it's a really big cannon fodder that is harder to deal with than, let's say, a Bloodghast or Elvish Visionary. And yeah, especially when it's becoming monstrous. So, so far for the deck itself. Now to some... as I said at the beginning, I wanted to give you some substitutes for the premium cards, which are Vaporsnack and Think Twice. I'd replace... Sorry, I have to do this first. Vaporsnack simply by... I replace it by... where is it? By Voyage's End. It's basically it's a return to hand for 2 mana, which means it costs 1 mana more. 1 more mana, but it has, in addition, it has this ability to scry, which means you can look at the top card of your library, and if you want it, you may leave it on the top of your library. If you don't want it, you may put it in your graveyard or on the bottom of your library. That's what scry says, on the bottom of your library. Yeah, I'll choose 4 of them, all 4. If you remove Vaporsnack and Think Twice, and you need to replace 1 more card, or I mean you can leave it there, and no, you can't, because there are 5 premium cards. So you take those 5 out, you put in 4 Voyages End, and what I'd do is I'd add in another where is it? Another Elvish Visionary, just for the card advantage. So to keep up this, getting your cards pretty fast, and to keep up this, as I said, this card advantage. There's really not much juggling around with cards in this deck, since you are bound to this engine. This way, I decided to make it 61 cards, which isn't that. Which isn't its usual 60 card type decks, but it really worked out for me. So it doesn't mind if there's 1 more card or if it's exactly 60. Let's talk about the lands for a short time. I put in 5 of each basic land and like 3 of the corresponding guild gates, so that altogether we have 24 lands, which is necessary in this deck, and which isn't that much of a problem, since there are landfall abilities, and since there are ways to thin out your deck, as I said, like Cultivate, or even Wayfinder thins out your deck too. So don't be afraid, you will draw lands only. You will draw a lot of lands, but you will need them. Okay, my first deck guide in English. A lot of cards in it, because I had to redo some scenes over and over again. As I said, never mind the mistakes. English is not my first language. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I could provide some thoughts. Let me know in the comments if you would want to see more of them deck guides, and or if you didn't understand something I was saying, I will try to answer your comments, of course, and see what I can do. So far, thanks for watching, stay tuned, and till next time, bye!